Mother Knows Death, starring Nicole and Jemmy and Maria QK.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mother Knows Death. Let's get started with the story of the day.
So back in 2012, this guy Michael and his roommate Mary were kidnapped from their home in Newport Beach. So the kidnappers had blindfolded them, tied them up, and drove them 140 miles away into the Mojave Desert. They told Mary if she cooperated, they wouldn't hurt her, but then proceeded to absolutely torture Michael. They were horribly torturing him with a blowtorch, a taser, and then eventually they put a zip tie around his penis and cut it off.
Who did this to him?
So this Michael guy owned this really successful weed dispensary, and there was this rumor flying around that he was hiding money in this desert. And so this guy orchestrated with these two people he met in high school to unfoil this like kidnapping plot and take him out there and try to interrogate him until he admitted where the money was, but it wasn't true. So of course he never gave up the information because there was no information to give up.
What the fuck? Could you imagine how scary that must have been for these people to get kidnapped out of their house?
No, and basically, after they're torturing them and everything, the people are laughing the entire time and then, like idiots, left a knife when they finally left them alone in the desert, but they were clearly leaving them out there to die. So the roommate, Mary, ends up getting the knife and she was able to at least cut her feet free. So she ran out to the road and by the grace of God, this cop is like on this road and finds her. And then she's like, my roommate's bleeding out in the middle of the desert. They find him. And it was just an absolute mess. And this was going on for years after this. They figured out this guy named Hussein Nayeri orchestrated the entire thing because he thought there was like $1 million hidden in the desert, which there wasn't.
What a fucking moron.
He fled to Iran. They had to get his wife to trick him into coming back to California so they could arrest him.
That's interesting. So does that mean that in California, they're not able to communicate with people there to get him to go back to the United States? Like they actually had to have a civilian manipulate him in order to get him to go back?
Well, I think every country has different extradition, if that's the correct term, rules.
It's just to me, like I understand there's certain crimes, but this is attempted murder and kidnapping. It's a really serious crime. I'm surprised that.
Well, I think it's up to the country that the person is in whether they're going to extradite them or not back over here. So I don't know if they were having issues with that, but I mean, they couldn't get him back. They had his wife. I don't remember exactly what went down. This whole story is really detailed in Matt Murphy's book, and I guess a new special is coming out about it, which is why it's in the news now. But they had to have this woman get him back over here so they could arrest him. Then when he's in jail awaiting trial, he escapes through a vent with two other prisoners. He was on the run for a week. So that must have been really scary for the victims and everybody else involved. But yeah, he was finally prosecuted and what a fucking mess. And the guy never got, like, the penis is done. It's not like they were able to reattach it like in some of the other cases we talked about.
That's the craziest part is that they don't even know where the penis is. It's not like they found it and brought it back to the hospital. It's just gone, which is really fucking weird. The whole thing is weird actually because even if you were going to kidnap and torture someone and leave them for dead, like why would you touch their penis? It's fucking weird.
It's very weird, especially if you really have this grand conspiracy that they have all this money hidden. I don't think that's the way you're going to get somebody to give up the information or the goods. I just think this is ridiculous. I mean, this story is so involved. It's insane. And all the players
this murder plot sounds like a cartoon where you're tying the people up and you don't really want them to die. What movie is it where it's like Austin Powers where Scott keeps saying to the dad, like, hey, if you really want to kill Austin Powers, like, I'll just shoot him right now and we'll take care of it. And he's just like making up all these crazy plots in order to get rid of the guy instead of just doing it the easy way. Like, you're cutting off someone's penis, right? And there are lots of arteries in the penis, but they're pretty little. So it's not going to cause someone to bleed to death, at least for a really long time. I don't know if these people are shocked that these two ended up surviving. It just sounds ridiculous, right? Like, we're going to just leave this knife here. If you could reach it, then you could cut off the ties around your ankles and stuff. It's just so crazy.
It's just a really gruesome crime for something. I mean, you shouldn't do it even if this guy does have money hidden in the desert, but think about how ridiculous that statement is to think somebody's hiding money in the desert, and then you don't even have solid proof that that's happening, and you take these horrendous steps to torture these people, and it's all for nothing. It's completely idiotic.
Yeah, and on top of just cutting off someone's penis is devastating emotionally. It's also painful too. But then they were pouring bleach on the wounds, which just destruct the tissue around it. It's a really basic or it has a really high pH of a solution that could leave chemical burns. But I don't know if you've ever just been cleaning and got bleach inside of an open wound. It freaking burns really bad. And imagine having this open penile wound and having bleach poured in it. It's just so disturbing. And I was thinking about this too, because I've been out in that desert recently and there's never cars around. There could be hours before cars go by. So think about how really you said by the grace of God that this cop so happened to be driving down the road, because usually if you're in the desert at night, you're in the desert and there's no one to help you. It's just such a crazy story. It's unbelievable.
If I'm remembering correctly too, I feel like in Matt's book he said when the guy escaped from prison that he had a picture of him laying on the bed when they realized he was missing. So there's that whole added extra level of fear that like, oh shit, the victims, the people that turned him in, the now ex-wife that helped get him back over here, and now he's going over after the legal team that's trying to prosecute him. I would never want that job. Remember somebody we know bought a house that was formerly owned by a judge, and she was saying people were just showing up to the house thinking the judge still lived there?
Oh yeah, I've heard that before. That happened to some person that lived around in my neighborhood too. It's just it's so outrageous when that happens. It is something to think about though, that it's funny because there was a house that's for sale right now that looks awesome, that there is someone like that owned it. And now to think about it, it's like, no, that would just be a dumb idea to even look at a house like that,
I wonder if you have to disclose that you had a job like that because of the potential of threats that would come your way.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
Okay, celebrity news. We have some pretty interesting celebrity news this week.
So back in 2022, Ewan McGregor started getting hundreds of crazy messages from this woman. She was threatening him and then suggesting that his new wife had stolen him away from her. But meanwhile, he's like, who are you, right? So over time, the messages progressively got more threatening. And then this past Christmas Eve, she showed up at his ex-wife's house while he and his family were celebrating Christmas. Super
that is
scary.
fucking scary. I know. Stalkers are the scariest thing, right?
Yeah, I really do think so. And luckily they had a security gate and she was being really weird on the outside of it. So, of course, they didn't let her in. And then I guess they pieced together that it was this woman. They were saying that she was like documenting her entire journey from Michigan to California to pay the unexpected visit. And so that just happened at the end of 2024. So since this started in 2022, Ewan is saying that she sent over 500 emails or messages between him, his friends, and his family that were threatening him, suggesting that she wanted to have children with him. But she said, don't worry, I don't need your dick. I just need your balls so I could do IVF. What is going on in people's heads?
The thing is that stalkers a lot of the times, most of the time, they have some kind of either underlying personality disorder like narcissistic personality disorder or borderline personality disorder. And some of them also have diagnosable mental illness like schizophrenia or bipolar. It sounds like she's having severe delusions right off the bat just by you saying that she thinks that the wife stole him away from her and stuff. I mean, Ewan McGregor is quite a fine specimen, or at least he used to be. So I understand the attractiveness that she has towards him. But when you hear about stories of people with stalkers, it is really terrifying. And think about how lucky Ewan McGregor is to have a gate around his house and be fortunate enough to have security and stuff. But this happens. They estimate a year that 3.4 million people just in the United States alone are stalked over the age of 18. I mean, that that is terrifying because most of those people don't have the means to keep people away that are acting crazy like this.
Yeah, and you don't have to be a celebrity to be stalked. I mean, it happens to regular people all of the time.
Yeah,
And it's really scary.
It really is scary, and it's scary for everyone around too because when, you know, there's always things that happen like a girlfriend and a boyfriend could break up or whatever, but then when the person is just not getting the hint kind of, even if it's a friend that's too close or anything, it starts to become alarming and you're never really safe and you don't know what's going through that person's head. It's just terrifying.
Like, if you're not responding to people or engaging in conversation when they're reaching out constantly to you, I think it's time to take the hint that maybe they don't want to talk to you. One of the other delusions she was having was last October, she had said in one of her messages that she believed the movie The Da Vinci Code was giving her a secret message from, quote, the Illuminati saying that she was a princess.
Yeah, she's just completely out of her mind.
She also was referencing Dexter, a sniper a sniper rifle she was considering buying. But he's been now granted a temporary restraining order, which I'm sure will definitely turn into a permanent restraining order.
Why is it temporary? Like,
well, I think because it's an emergency one,
okay.
and it takes a little bit longer to get the permanent one.
Like an emergency, any kind of restraining order is just a piece of paper that's not going to stop a psycho. I mean, he's just lucky that he could have armed security around him at all times.
So she can't, with this restraining order, she can't go near him, his wife, his 5 kids, or his ex-wife. She has to stay at least 100 yards away from them, and she can't contact them or harass them in any way. But we see this all the time.
I didn't even know it was a possibility to get within 100 yards of Ewan McGregor. You know,
well, I guess you can figure it out.
This is giving me some ideas here.
This is why celebrities are always buying houses under LLCs and stuff, because they like don't want you knowing where they live, because you could just Google it and find it so easy. So I'm sure like the Phillies players, for example, love when they take the effort to buy their houses under LLCs, and then these real estate websites are like blowing up their spot, giving out their addresses.
Well, I just came across an Instagram account the other day that had this guy just going to all of the fronts of all of these famous people's houses and just showing what it's like to drive up the street to get to their house and what the front landscaping looks like and everything. And most of these people have a gate, but I'm thinking just you're putting these people's names with their houses. How is this even publicly available information? I guess it is, because a lot of the houses that he shows I know belong to these people, but he's actually kind of showing how to get there. He blurs out their exact number on their house, but really, if you just drive around, you could figure it out, or you're just looking at other landmarks around, you know, it's just freaking scary, man.
It really is scary, and his kids shouldn't have had to go through that terror right before Christmas.
Right? Like, they're worried about Santa and shit, and then they have to worry about this. It's so terrible.
Yeah. All right, so the guy that killed Johnny and Matthew Gaudreau is now saying that they were drunker than he was the night he hit them, so he wants to have his indictment thrown out.
All right, I hate to say this because I was so upset about this case. I still am really upset about this case, and I think that the driver is a total douchebag, but I kind of think he has a point in this situation. Apparently his blood alcohol level was 0.087, which is just over the legal limit, but Johnny's was 0.129 and his brother's was 0.134, which is very significant.
Okay, I'm going to push back and say, if a sober person hit them, I think, yes, you can argue they were definitely drunk while on a bicycle, and they could have easily swerved in front of the person causing the wreck. But I still understand that in this case, but that guy was still drunk and still hit them also. So, like, you can't get off for it because you still also did it, and you are also intoxicated.
I understand that, but when there's no cameras and there's no witnesses at the scene and everything, I don't think that the accident could be 100% put on him when the other party was also drunk. No, I think he should still... I mean, he's facing up to 60 years in prison for this. So you have to understand from their perspective, he shouldn't have been driving drunk, even though he was kind of barely just over the limit. I don't think anybody should drink. We've had this conversation multiple times. But these these two guys were drunk, and it's a weird thing because in New Jersey, it's not against the law to drive a bicycle while intoxicated. You could get in trouble for disorderly conduct, but so maybe this is an eye-opener that those types of laws need to change, especially when bicycle riders are driving in the street. Because what if he was completely sober and they did drive in front of him? That's not fair to the person
But
that hit them.
that's the conversation, though. If he got pulled over and hit them by accident and they prove this, I think he's not going to go to jail at all, but he was still drunk driving and therefore hit and killed them.
Yeah,
So
I understand that, but
I think maybe he won't get as severe as a sentence with that information being brought to light, but he still needs to be punished for drunk driving and taking the lives of two people, whether they caused the wreck or not, because he was still impaired.
well, and this is why you don't do that, right? I mean, he was barely over the legal limit, so in all honesty, he could have, especially because he's an alcoholic, right? Or he has a history of being an alcoholic. That probably did not do much to him to be driving, to be honest with you. But because of the law and everything, I understand that. But according to the blood alcohol chart, which I looked at, so I looked up what the weight of Johnny Gaudreau was, and it says that he's 150 pounds. So there's charts done compared to how much people weigh and how much they drink and how long it takes. And so we're talking about having one drink, right? So one drink could be a 12-ounce beer, 10 ounces of micro beer or a wine cooler, 8 ounces of malt liquor, 4 ounces of wine, or 1.25 ounces of an 80 proof hard alcohol. So that's what would be considered one drink here. A person that weighs 150 pounds, in order to achieve a blood alcohol level that they had at the time of the accident, that they would have to have 6 or 7 drinks that I just described within 1 hour of measuring a blood alcohol level of that high. It's significant to think
Listen,
about that.
I'm not saying they were in the right being on the bikes and being that drunk, but we can't just I feel like, they made a point to say he wasn't trying to get off completely necessarily, and he wasn't trying to throw them under the bus, but you're bringing up the point, and I understand you want to do anything to help your case, but you were still in the wrong as well. So he was not a completely sober person, that this was just an accident and they may have caused it. Two wrongs don't make a right.
Let's say this, for example. You know how I didn't even tell you this, actually. No, I did. About the nursing home, the old person from the nursing home on 130 that got killed the other day.
I don't think that place is a nursing home. I think it's just a senior apartment building.
Oh, well, whatever. It's a 90-year-old person ended up in the middle of the highway, basically, and got killed. So the person that killed him, I don't even know what happened or whatever, but let's just say, because I drive that road every single day to pick the kids up for school. Let's just say that was me, right? I hit the person. It's just a complete accident because there's a human being in the middle of a street where people are driving 60 miles an hour, right? But let's say I had 4 beers and my blood alcohol was slightly over. It's wrong that you're drinking and driving, for sure, and you're breaking the law, but also there shouldn't be a human in the middle of a road that's going 90 miles an hour or whatever.
There shouldn't, but if you were sober, you might have been able to get around the situation.
But
that's the point
also
I'm trying to make.
The bike riders would have been able to get out of a situation too. So I'm just saying that, but I personally think that both people are at fault with this new information coming to light, and I think that really the bike laws should change, because if you're sharing the road, then both parties have to be semi-responsible. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying, his whole case cannot be thrown out because they were drunk, because he is still responsible because he did it and he was also drunk. So, yes, maybe he should get less time with that, but, the whole entire case can't just be thrown out.
Okay, freak accidents.
In Texas, this 20-year-old girl had a couple sips of an energy drink before working out and then a couple minutes later collapsed on the floor.
Okay, guys, so I have this journal article written. I've had it saved aside because it's really it's really crazy just because every single person drinks these energy drinks. And this journal paper is called The Dark Side of Energy Drinks: A Comprehensive Review and Their Impacts on the Human Body. And it is alarming to read this paper because it gives you how many milligrams of caffeine are in every drink, like popular drinks that you see in the store. And then it gives you a whole entire list of people who have had either adverse reactions, severe injury, and or death from these drinks, and what drink they had and what caused it. And we think, okay, there's caffeine in it, it's the same as coffee, but normally when people drink coffee, there's 77 to 150 milligrams of caffeine, whereas these drinks can go anywhere from 50 to 505 milligrams of caffeine, which would make them triple, 3 times as much more caffeine in some of these drinks than a cup of coffee. And you're seeing these injuries a lot in 20-year-old people because most people throughout their life, we don't hear too much about caffeine because if you just drink coffee and stuff, it's less likely to happen. But because you're having such a high dose of it, and also the problem is that caffeine is a legal stimulant, but it's okay in a cup of coffee. But if you're putting 3 times that amount in a drink, that's when it becomes not okay for a lot of people. And in this case, she ended up going into cardiac arrest, which means her heart stopped 3 different times, or 4 different times, actually. Sorry. She went to the hospital. She was put on life support, including ECMO, which is a machine that helps circulate your blood, dialysis, which helps her kidneys because she had kidney failure, and she was on a machine to help her breathe as well. But luckily, they were able to save her life. And she was a fit person. She was at the gym. She was doing deadlifts, and she said that she had a third of an energy drink, just 1/3.
So, do you think that she had pre-existing heart things that she didn't know about and that's kind of what set it off, or you shouldn't be having these type of drinks before getting your heart going while exercising?
It's not necessarily. It's just that they could change your heart rate and your heartbeat. They increase blood pressure. There's just different things that it could rarely do, but it could cause something called ventricular fibrillation, which is it makes your heartbeat abnormal. And this could happen in someone that is considered to be a healthy person. That's why it's so scary. Now, the good news is that most of these severe injuries and deaths, like this one is more of a freak accident, which is why it's in the freak accident category. But once you read this paper, it's alarming to see that a lot of these injuries were caused by people drinking 6 and 7 of these drinks in a row and then having their heart stop. Like, I can't even imagine that people are actually doing this, but a lot of the cases, you had one here and there that was, oh, this was the first time a person had a caffeine drink, which, think about this. I mean, drinking your first cup of coffee could give you an accelerated heart rate. If you're drinking one that has 3 times as much, of course, you're going to have a problem. But definitely in this paper, it really emphasized it was a lot of younger men. And the most injuries I saw were number 1, drinking like Red Bull and vodka together. That was a big one.
Well,
And
actually, when we do ramp certification for bartending and serving alcohol drinks, you have to serve less drinks with coffee, like espresso martinis or drinks with Red Bull or energy drinks in them because they are substantially more dangerous than just a regular mixed drink. So
yeah, so it's interesting, right? That was a lot of the injuries. And then, like I said, just having multiple pounding them. So they're scary. And the worst part is that they sell them just in the fridge at 7-Eleven and Wawa. A kid could go buy it. My kid could buy it if they want to, if they're in the store. There was this one that was really Prime or something that some YouTuber, all the kids this summer were into. And then there were ones that were just flavored water kind of thing. And the other ones were these energy drinks.
Well,
And
everybody's really into Celsius right now, which I've never tried, but the people I know that drink it are obsessed with it. Like, they will have multiple in a day.
what is it?
It's an energy drink.
I don't know if I've ever heard of it.
I see it at the grocery store, but it is this obsession people have. And like back in my day, in my early 20s, Red Bull was the shit and everybody liked that.
Oh,
But nobody.
Red Bull is nothing compared to some of these other ones. Like Red Bull has 160 milligrams of caffeine in it, which is just a little bit more than the strongest cup of coffee. But there's some that have hundreds. It's outrageous that they even sell these. They almost should be regulated by the government in a way. And you're hearing this more and more. Remember, we covered a case it probably was a year ago at this point of a person that had one of those energy drinks at Panera Bread and died, a young person, or
Oh yeah,
that
that
they
charged
died. They
energy.
actually died, right?
Yeah.
I believe
I
so.
I also, so like when I was a teenager and stuff, like Monster was really huge, and then in my 20s, I mean Red Bull had been around for a long time, but it was happening a
Have you
lot
ever
amongst my
tried
friends.
Red Bull?
Yeah, I used to drink it all the time when I was working at the bar because I don't mind the taste of it and it would help me out. Like I had to stay up
I
till 3 o'clock in
tasted
the
it.
morning.
I'll never forget. I was at Acme and I tasted it in the parking lot because I was like, what's the big deal? And I like threw it up all over in the parking lot.
Well,
I just thought it was the grossest tasting thing ever.
the original flavor is really gross, but they made this orange one that's actually really delicious. But like I used to drink that. I mean, I
Yeah,
haven't had it in
don't
10
drink
years.
that shit anymore. I wish I
haven't ha-
knew that.
I haven't had it since I was in my early 20s, but I used to drink it a lot because, you know, the coffee shops would close and stuff, and I was working till 3 o'clock in the morning, and they sold them at CVS and everything, so you could just go in and grab one.
Okay, let's get on to this little kid injury.
I feel like we're just going to have this story in the entire run of this podcast over and over and over again. These magnetic beads and the water beads, too, are just constantly causing problems with kids. In this case, this little boy wanted to pretend he had a tongue piercing and tried to put one of these magnetic balls on the top of his tongue and underneath of his tongue, but because of how strong they were, they grabbed together and shot into the back of his throat and he swallowed them.
It's cool that this kid went up to his mom right away and was like, oh shit, I did something really bad, because I feel like most kids would be scared that they would get in trouble and just wouldn't say anything.
No, definitely not.
So luckily the mom knew right away, took him to the hospital right away. And also luckily the two magnets ended up sticking together before he swallowed them, because if you just swallow one of these magnets, it's not that big of a deal. You'll just poop it out. But in this case, if you have one or more, they could actually, especially if they're not together, they could cause parts of the bowel to stick together and cause an obstruction. So if you think about, we always talk about this, think about the GI tract as being a tube, like a hose. If you have one magnet on one end of it and one a little bit lower, those two magnets can end up sticking together and kinking the hose, which would make food not be able to pass through. It would cause an obstruction, which could then rupture. Think if you can't get water through a hose, what happens? It eventually bursts. The same thing will happen to your colon or your small intestine. And kids have died from this. It's so bad, actually, in emergency rooms. They've reported it so much that they ban these things. A lot of brands of them are off the market because the manufacturers aren't following the rules as far as how strong they're making them, and that they're enticing the children to stick in their mouth.
Of course they are. And the craziest part of this is after they see that they're in his stomach and the x-ray they did at the hospital, they're like, you have to keep him away from other magnetic things until they naturally pass so it doesn't risk them moving around.
So this mom said she had bought this for him a couple years ago and then he was just playing with it. I think it was either this past year or the year before that when the big ban happened that they're not really supposed to have these anymore, which
But they're back. Remember we
they're
reported
back.
they were selling them again?
I just saw them when we were in Cape May. We were in some gift shop and I saw them and I was just like, dude, look, these are for sale right here. I thought you weren't allowed to buy these things anymore. But that's what it's important to just tell parents, that maybe once in a while go on the product and safety consumer website and just see if any toys that your kids are playing with are recalled, because you're going to be shocked to see, you know, especially they're all from China, all of them that are recalled all the time, you know, and you're going to be shocked to see, oh, you went on Amazon 2 years ago and got your kid the latest thing and then you put it away and then they find it years later and here you come to find out that it's dangerous and shouldn't be in your house.
Yeah. This episode is brought to you by The Gross Room.
Guys, you have to check out the Gross Room. We have all of these stories that we talk about on the news episodes, and we show the photographs with them, and we have a discussion about all of these cases. It's really, really an awesome place to be. This week we were covering the Karen Reed case, like I told you, and next week we will be going over the autopsy, which is it's so juicy, and I feel like I really stumbled upon something that I'm bringing up that I haven't heard yet anybody really talking about with that case. So I think you guys will be interested in that, and I'll show pictures. We're also going to be covering bestiality soon. That's in our lineup coming up soon, which is really an intriguing topic, don't you think, Ray?
I wouldn't say intriguing.
No, it
it's
is.
Really
it's just so
disturbing.
outrageous that like anybody would do that. But there's a lot of interesting history with it and the laws and everything. So we're going to talk about that and just so much more. So join us in the Gross Room.
Head over to thegrossroom.com for more info and to sign up for only $5.99 for the month.
Okay, true crime.
Well, thanks, Lauren, for sending this one over this morning. But last night in New York, this boat was in the East River right outside of Manhattan. They came across a suspicious suitcase in the water. I guess it is really unusual when a suitcase is just floating in the water. So, of course, they have to alert authorities. So, the New York Police Department Harbor Unit sent to the scene. They retrieved the suitcase, and when they opened it, they found a human torso inside.
I love that in the article it says that the death is being investigated. They know it's a man and they're thinking it might be suspicious, but they have not yet classified it as a homicide.
Well, how the fuck does a torso just end up in a suitcase?
I'd like to know. There's whenever we have a case like this, I always try to think like, okay, maybe this was an accident. There's no other possibility in this particular case. So it's definitely a homicide. I can't imagine anyone, there's no person that sells human torsos in a suitcase for a living and is traveling. Like, what? There's no reason. There's no accident that would cause that.
Well, let's say the person died of natural causes. Somebody still cut up their body and put it in the suitcase. There is still a crime happening.
There's
in
definitely
some capacity.
Yeah, I guess you could say that there's technically that wouldn't be considered a homicide, but just really, if someone died from natural causes, why would you ever do that? I mean, I guess weirder things have been done or whatever, but I'm curious to see how this is going to go. Plus, like, where's the dude's head? Where's the dude's limbs? Like, are they going to wash up later? I don't know.
So when this happens, they just bring the remains to the ME, like with the airplane. They just bring the remains to the ME, and then they just have to kind of work backwards to try to identify the person.
Yeah, and it might be really difficult because we don't really hear anything else. All you hear is a torso, but I'm sure unless it just freshly died, it's decomposed, it's been in the water, and then you have to deal with all that damage. So, and there's no head, there's no teeth, which is difficult for identification. So they probably are going to have to do DNA. There's no fingerprints. You know what I mean? Like,
they
it's
believe
kind
it's
of
a male.
Yeah, that's easy to determine.
Yeah.
Most of the time anyway. Yeah, I mean that's all they could say. They'll be, even when they do the x-rays and everything, they can actually age people and figure out what age range they are based upon the development of their bones. And just by the appearance, although the appearance of the body is not just going to look like a person that just died because of all that I said, it decomposed and stuff like that, but they'll be able to figure it out. They're a good medical examiner's office. They'll figure it out.
It's so cool they could figure out how old people are based on their bones. I'm so fascinated.
It's not an exact science, but yeah, I mean, there's certain things that you wouldn't see. For example, if you looked at bones and you saw in their shoulders or their humeral heads and their femoral heads or their hips, you saw a lot of changes that were associated with osteoarthritis. It's not that it's impossible for younger people to get that, but if you see changes like that in all of the bones, you could definitely tell that a person is older. And just with the growth plates and everything like that, they could definitely tell the difference between 20-year-olds and 70-year-olds. And yeah, it's pretty cool. And obviously child versus adult. So it just gives them like more of an estimate and narrowed down, but ultimately the DNA should help the most in that case.
Yeah.
Okay. Medical news.
So, a new studies found that levels of microplastics found in the human brain are higher than levels found in other organs. I know this is a topic that's been coming up a lot in recent years, but this study's pretty shocking, right?
So a microplastic is something that is considered to be less than 5 millimeters in size, but there's been an alarming video that's been going around the internet just showing examples of how you can do this. And one of them is by the cutting board. Like when you cut the cutting board and the knife is cutting against the plastic, it makes those fine little pieces of plastic. And that's just one example of the many. As I was writing this up this afternoon, I'm eating my acai bowl that is in a plastic container with a plastic spoon. It's just every single person is always using these things all the time with water bottles and this and that, which is actually funny with the water bottle situation because when I was a kid, there was no such thing as bottled water. And then all of a sudden it was like, you can't drink tap water. It's so dangerous. And now they're telling you to drink tap water again, but filter it. But then I read that there's PFAs are the highest in those Brita filters and stuff. So you just go back and forth of like, what the hell is the safest thing for me to do right now, right? Because
Yeah.
this is what happens. They tell you this is not safe and then whatever. So now we have this problem that they're finding all of these little pieces of plastic in people's brains. And they did this really cool study where they took brain samples from 28 autopsies from 2016 and 24 autopsies from 2024. And they saw these microplastics in all of the brains. But the most alarming thing was that they saw so much more in the brains from 2024 as opposed to the brains in 2016, which is alarming. And
Yeah.
the reason this is of concern is because they're not 100% sure what causes microplastics to be a problem for human pathology, but they think that it could trigger inflammation and can disrupt organ function. And one of the most striking things to come out of studies like this is that there were 10 times the amount of these plastics in brains with people with dementia. And that's that's one of my biggest fears is something like that happening as an adult. So if they could somehow come up with a correlation that this is causing this, that would be awesome. But I think that really, like every single time you see one of these studies, you really have to start thinking like, how can I reduce my use of plastic because it's not good.
Yeah, because I guess my first question was like, how are they even getting into your body? But just even having the cutting board example makes so much sense. And now I'm sitting here like I need to order all wood cutting boards or something.
Well, one of the things they're saying is that because of all the plastics that are used just in irrigation of farmland and stuff, that it could be possible that cows, for example, are eating this they're grazing on land that has been used with this plastic contained water. Basically, they're eating it, then their manure is being recycled back into the environment. So it could be coming from that. They're also saying it could be coming from just inhaling it and going up your nose right into your brain. They just think it's curious that it's going into the brain because there is this thing called a blood-brain barrier, which prevents a lot of things from getting into your brain. So when things can get through that barrier, they're starting to be concerned and figure out how they get there.
Yeah. It's definitely really fascinating. I know this topic has been coming up a lot, especially I was seeing a lot of articles in the last year about it, like, them finding a large quantity in like a uterus or something or other organs.
Oh yeah, they've seen them in other organs, placentas, which placentas are alarming too because they're such a temporary organ. You only have them for 9 months, right?
Yeah.
But they're saying that most people are consuming 5 grams of microplastics a week, which they say is equivalent to the weight of a credit card.
It's insane. Imagine swallowing a credit card a week. What were they saying? They said on average, the brain sample studied contained 7 grams of microplastics, which is roughly the same weight as the average plastic spoon.
Yeah.
So imagine a plastic spoon just being in your brain.
I'm actually curious how they retrieve these plastics because they are so small. If there's a certain kind of method that they do that they're able to separate them from the tissue in order to measure them in this way. I'm really curious about that. But yeah, this is it's just, because we drink a lot of bottled water in the house, and it just makes you think like, like maybe we should stop doing that, especially with the children.
Well, they also said the most common was polyethylene, which is most commonly found in bottles and cups, which you were touching on a little bit. And I'm thinking of, like every morning when I go out and get a coffee, I'm also waiting. I drink so much club soda all day out of cans. I'm waiting for that.
Oh, there's
problem to
already a
come
thing
up.
there's already a thing with the cans.
Yeah, I know
The
that's
aluminum.
coming up.
Yeah, there is. And then it's like, okay, we're gonna go back to glass, and it just everything is such a fucking mess. All right,
So
the next story is so cute.
it's really
I
cute,
love
and
this story.
it's a nice break. We've had a pretty like harsh couple of weeks with stories on here.
Exactly.
So this one's pretty nice.
2025 has been really, really terrible for news, for sure.
Yeah, so in Alabama, this pregnant woman started going into labor, and her boyfriend start driving to the hospital, but Alabama was facing this historic snowstorm, and the condition on the roads were really poor. So at some point in their drive, she's like, I can't make it anymore. I have to pull over. They pull over in a Krispy Kreme parking lot and call 911, and her boyfriend delivers this baby in the Krispy Kreme parking lot in the front seat while their 4-year-old's in the back seat. How traumatizing must that have been? But I think it's really cool.
For who exactly? Like which one?
For everybody involved.
Because the mom is the only one that was in the amount of pain, but the dad and the kid were probably more freaked out about it.
Yeah, but Krispy Kreme seems quite honored that this happened. They have been listed as the place of birth on the birth certificate, which I think is cool.
That's so cool. I love that.
And now they said they're going to throw him a birthday party every year.
That's amazing. Well, so the best part of the whole entire story is that the mom is giving the son the nickname of Glaze. Like, how fucking hilarious is that? I love it.
That's awesome. They're also giving them free donuts for a year. So I think that's pretty cool.
No, I thought they said they were going to give him a box of donuts every year for 18 years or something for every week.
They're throwing him a party every year for his birthday,
but
they have unlimited free donuts for this year.
Oh, yeah. And the mom's like, well, I might have to give them away or something because I do have to get my figure back. Because listen, like seriously, I could like seriously put down a dozen of glazed donuts. Like I wouldn't now because I don't eat gluten, but like back in the day, you could easily eat like 10 of them with no problem when they're hot, especially.
Like, this is a controversial opinion, but I really like Dunkin' Donuts.
Ew, why? They're the worst.
Yesterday, I got the brownie batter one, and I just ate the filling out of it because it's so
that's
delicious.
Ridiculous.
I don't know.
You could probably find a copycat recipe for that. I'm going to look that up and see if I could find it for you to make it for you.
You should make donuts for the Super Bowl on Sunday.
No, I don't know how to make a good. I guess I could try for a gluten-free donut, but I don't think I've ever had one that was good, to be honest. They're like a brick.
Agreed.
But I'll make you just the dip. How's that? And you could just eat it out of a bowl.
Yeah, can't you make the dip in like little fried
I'm making
balls?
good stuff. Listen, I went on multiple lists to see what to bring to a Super Bowl party because everyone knows that I hate football and have no interest, right? But I'm married, so there you go. But I went on.
Is in the Super Bowl.
What? I just don't care. Anyway, I went on like our girl, the Pioneer Woman.
Oh, I love redrumming.
She had like a list of all this stuff. So I'm making Blondie brownies. I'm making Muddy Buddies, which are also called Puppy Chow. Never heard of that before, but they're delicious.
You've never heard of Muddy Buddy?
No, I've heard of Muddy Buddy. I've never heard them called Puppy Chow.
Oh.
But for those of you that don't know, it's just like a sweet Chex Mix kind of situation. It just sounds...
What's that classic Italian dessert that's like the little fried balls that has like nonpareils and the glaze on it?
Oh.
Can't we make a brownie batter version of that?
What are they called? I can't think of that right now.
Man, now I want a snack. All right,
isn't it like a weird word that's like zzz?
Isn't that like a zeppoli or something? No.
I don't know. No, I think a zeppoli is fried dough with powdered sugar.
Hold on. I gotta look this up. Italian dessert.
They're called like scrigolatelli or something
No,
like
it's
that. It's
not.
like an S and a G
Oh,
together.
Strafoli.
See, I was
All
there.
our fellow Italians are probably
They're,
screaming in rage.
no, they're not, because they're like, she's on to it. The S and the F together.
Strafoli.
Yeah, I want those.
All right, we gotta get through this episode because I need a snack.
I know. We do, actually, because I have to go get the kids from school. Okay. Other death news.
All right, this is a really weird one. In Georgia, police made a traffic stop, and when they pulled over the car, there was just a dead body in the passenger seat.
Yeah, so there's not really much to report here. I think, again, we say with the cops all the time, what's it like to just pull over someone and put the flashlight in the car and be like, yo, your boy okay over there? The guy was only 21 years old, and the driver has since been released until the ongoing investigation. No idea what happened. So in this case, at least, we could say that a homicide might not have happened because the guy could have OD'd, the guy could have had a heart. There's different reasons that there would be a dead body in someone's car. Maybe the guy was on the way to drive him to the hospital. Who knows? But
well, yeah, because the victim's mother saying that she believes he was conducting a legal private gun sale with the unidentified driver. The police have also said they're not going to make any charging decisions or draw any conclusions until they review evidence. So the driver is not in custody right now, and I guess they're going to try to figure out exactly what led to that point. But all right, this next story is also odd. A listener sent this in this morning. So what I'm gathering from all of this is that this woman and her daughter lived in this apartment building, and since 2023, neighbors were reporting a horrible smell. And recently, the housing staff tried to visit her, but she wouldn't let them in. And after the encounter, she decided to then take her handicapped daughter out to a local shopping center. But then the housing staff is following her to the shopping center. And as they're trailing behind her, they realize there's this horrible smell because her daughter, who's in this wheelchair, is dead.
This is actually a really sad story. She was diagnosed with something called prolonged grief disorder. And she also had a brain tumor. So clearly, she wasn't thinking correctly. She didn't ever say how her daughter died, but they don't believe that she had anything to do with it. Unfortunately, they did do an autopsy on the girl, and they were not able to determine her cause of death because she was so decomposed.
Well, and the mom didn't know exactly when she died. She said it could have been September of 2022.
Oh, yeah. So she was... I mean,
very decomposed.
Skeleton, yeah, at that point, but still had a smell, clearly. There were no photographs of the girl. The girl never had a phone or anything. They were having just like a really hard time just identifying her and everything. They ultimately identified her through DNA, but they didn't make this woman go through the inquest trial because they said that they thought that it would be inhumane because she was suffering from this mental health problems, and also they didn't want her to miss the burial of her daughter. So I thought that was kind of cool. Because I feel like here they just put some old lady in jail for that or something.
Or like in a mental institution immediately.
I mean, this lady needs to be in a mental institution for sure, but she should at least be able to be seeing her daughter and everything. I mean, she's 80 years old too, almost. So,
yeah.
But when they went back to the house to check it, finally, it was covered in feces. It was covered in all over, like, human body fluids, all over the walls, all over the floor. Can you just imagine living next door to somebody and smelling something like that all the time, and then getting the confirmation that what you indeed have been smelling is a dead body decomposing? I mean, that smell doesn't go away, and you just smell it every day living in your house.
This happened with Jeffrey Dahmer. His neighbors were constantly calling the police saying the house smelled and they were hearing crazy noises, and they blew them off. And then you find out this like absolutely horrific thing was going on next door to you, just on the other side of the wall. How do you live with that?
I don't know, really.
It's really disturbing. Okay, let's move on to questions of the day. Every Friday on the @MotherKnowsDeath Instagram account, we put up a question box in the story, and you guys can ask whatever you want. At Autopsy, how can you differentiate between a blood clot that occurred during life versus coagulated old blood?
Okay, so when you have what is called a post-mortem clot, so after you die, your blood just kind of sits there and it turns gelatinous. It has a very specific look. It looks like jelly. And if it's inside of one of the blood vessels, you can pull it out very easily. It's not stuck to the wall at all. And it has something that's sometimes referred to as chicken fat. That's the appearance of it that you could see. And it just has a very distinct look. Whereas a true thrombus, which a thrombus is a blood clot that would travel and would cause something. I mean, the most significant one you would think about that you're looking for at autopsy is a pulmonary embolism. When you see that, it has a very distinct appearance because you could see what's called the lines of Zahn, which is when a blood clot forms, you could see the layers of the platelets and the fibrin and the blood cells. Everything separates and it makes very perfect layers. And the most distinguishing feature is that these blood clots are they're stuck to the wall of the vessel so that you can't really easily, it just doesn't slide out like a post-mortem clot would. It's very adherent to the wall there. And oftentimes too, because these thrombi or these pulmonary embolisms originate from the veins in the legs, sometimes in these particular clots, you could see the actual valves from the veins in the legs on the clot. It's a really cool thing that you could see. I could post photographs of it. I have on Instagram for sure and in the gross room, but I could do a specific post showing what those valves look like because that also gives it another distinguishing feature. And then, I mean, I think that any good PA or person that's doing autopsy could tell the difference without even having to look at it under the microscope. But ultimately, if you look at it under the microscope, you could see the lines of Zahn microscopically as well.
All right, why did you stay in surgical pathology and not become a forensic pathologist?
So I really don't have any interest in being a physician at all. And forensics doesn't pay well for PAs as far as where I live anyway. There are some medical examiner offices throughout the country that hire PAs and pay them a salary more comparable to a physician. But in Philadelphia, they don't have those kinds of positions. They only have a tech or a crime scene investigator, and then the next level of education they have is the medical examiner. And in order for me to take a job at the medical examiner's office, that would have been kind of a downgrade from my education and pay, so I wasn't interested in that, and also just didn't have the life experience to want to go through the full thing. So I decided to stay a PA, and I really didn't do too much surgical pathology. I actually did hospital autopsy, which was the main part of my career, and then also did surgical pathology towards the last couple of years, but mostly autopsy was my thing.
All right, last, if you didn't have me at a young age, where do you think you would be?
I'd be a forensic pathologist, just joking. I mean, obviously, like being a single mom, that was one of the, I had to give Maria the shaft for a couple years when I went to PA school anyway, and just I can't even imagine have tacked another, God, to be a medical examiner, you have to do 4 years medical school, 4 years pathology residency, and then another year or two of forensics. It's not that easy to do as a single mother without totally ignoring your child. But I'm just joking though, like I probably would be worse off than I am, honestly. I think that I got my shit together because I had her. Otherwise I was kind of lost, and it was just at a young age I was like, okay, well I guess I have to go to college and get a job so I could have health insurance for my kid. Like most people that are 17 and 18 years old aren't thinking that way. So it helped me fall into place with my career, and went from there. I have no idea what I would be doing. I don't even think about it because it's like, why?
Well, were you interested in like other careers when you were younger, or you just didn't think about it?
I just never thought about it. I mean, I was interested in doing like hair and stuff, but then when I went to school for that, I didn't like it. I just didn't. I had lots of different interests, but then I never really stuck with stuff because I didn't like it until I found pathology.
Yeah, well, all right. Thank you guys so much. If you have stories for us, please submit them to stories@motherknowsdeath.com or shoot us a message on Instagram.
See ya! Thank you for listening to Mother Knows Death. As a reminder, my training is as a pathologist assistant. I have a master's level education and specialize in anatomy and pathology education. I am not a doctor and I have not diagnosed or treated anyone, dead or alive, without the assistance of a licensed medical doctor. This show, my website, and social media accounts are designed to educate and inform people based on my experience working in pathology so they can make healthier decisions regarding their life and well-being. Always remember that science is changing every day and the opinions expressed in this episode are based on my knowledge of those subjects at the time of publication. If you are having a medical problem, have a medical question, or are having a medical emergency, please contact your physician or visit an urgent care center, emergency room, or hospital. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Mother Knows Death on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you get podcasts. Thanks.